No one in Manhattan's Belmont Ballroom could have predicted that a refined Broadway fundraiser would end in such a swirl of rumor and spectacle. The evening began as a picture of decorum, with patrons dressed in elegant gowns and sleek tuxedos, greeting one another politely under the glow of crystal chandeliers. Most attendees expected a typical philanthropic soiree: hushed conversations, polite cocktails, and predictable speeches touting the importance of the arts. The few paparazzi stationed by the main doors were resigned to capturing a handful of glamorous arrivals, hoping maybe one or two big names would lend a highlight. No one guessed the night would spiral into the year's juiciest backstage scandal. Sutton Foster arrived without fanfare, discreetly choosing a side entrance to avoid the press. She wore a stylish but modest midnight blue gown, her signature curly hair pinned back with minimal fuss. She wasn't looking to steal the show. Her plan, in fact, was to show up for a quick conversation with her old friend Jeremy, a board member who had confided that one major sponsor's commitment was just a nudge away from locking in. Sutton's star power was the gentle leverage needed to finalize the big donation. She anticipated a few handshakes, a relaxed chat, then a quiet departure. But her best intentions rarely anticipate the swirl of real-time drama. Inside, the ballroom was a study in polished luxury: gold-hued drapes, tasteful arrangements of fresh flowers atop tables, and an ensemble of softly playing strings in the corner. Waiters glided across the marble floor, offering canapés and champagne flutes. Polite applause would occasionally erupt near the dais whenever a small musical tribute ended. Everything seemed routine, some might say a bit too routine. Meanwhile, Melanie, a fellow Broadway luminary known for feeding tabloids subtle tidbits about her feuds, was already there, dressed in a gown that caught the light in 100 shimmering fragments. She'd parked herself near the sponsor's table, exuding confidence and relishing every moment of social maneuvering. Like Sutton, she'd come from a storied background in musical theater, but her relationship with Sutton had long been tinged by old casting rivalries. Observers in the Broadway community often whispered about tension between them, though no direct confrontation had ever gone public. Jeremy, prowling the perimeter in search of Sutton, finally caught sight of her slipping in from the side corridor. His eyes lit up with relief, and he steered her toward a cluster of VIP guests. He quickly explained the sponsor was all but ready to pledge a large sum to the foundation, but a final spark of star endorsement would help. Sutton nodded, more than willing to deliver a little gracious conversation or a quick endorsement. She found the group near a tall set of double doors leading to the terrace, just in time for Melanie to breeze over, a falsely sweet smile on her lips. Melanie wasted no time making indirect remarks about her own forthcoming show, pointedly overshadowing any attempt Sutton made to greet the sponsor. She'd shift her posture to dominate the conversation, drop names of influential producers, and only occasionally let Sutton finish a sentence. Sutton, still maintaining her composure, realized Melanie was stalling her from the sponsor to ensure she alone reaped the credit for snagging the donation. But Sutton offered no obvious resentment, content to let the moment float by, unaware that events soon to unfold would catapult her into the night's spotlight anyway. In the swirl of chatter, a waiter slid by with a tray of champagne flutes. Melanie, ever watchful for an advantage, orchestrated it so Sutton received a stronger concoction, some spiked blend hidden among the bubbly glasses. Distracted by Jeremy's introduction to the sponsor, and not having eaten much that evening, Sutton took multiple sips. A pleasant warmth spread through her, one she failed to note as more than mild excitement. On a normal day, she might have detected the sharpness, but the ambient noise and her trust in the event dulled any caution. A paparazzo idling near the sponsor's table snapped a series of pictures when Sutton's cheeks grew visibly pink, a faintly inebriated grin forming. He recognized potential headlines. Star sips too much at Broadway benefit? Meanwhile, Jeremy, oblivious to the sabotage, ushered them all toward the modest stage setup for a performance. Melanie was slated to deliver a short preview from her next Broadway role to dazzle the sponsor. But backstage, someone had mislabeled the music tracks and the stage lights were cued to the wrong entrance mark. The moment Melanie attempted to step front and center, the overhead spotlight, tied to a misfired track, pivoted directly onto Sutton instead. The band, or track, no one was exactly sure which, burst into a bright, brassy tune. The crowd, mid-conversation, stilled. Sutton, caught like a deer in headlights, felt the leftover adrenaline and the creeping haze of strong alcohol swirl together. Rather than freeze, she did the only thing that felt natural to a Broadway veteran. She sang. It started with a single line, her voice slightly shaky. Then the audience, initially unsure, clapped in encouragement. Energized by applause, Sutton pushed further, turning the snippet into a mini show-stopping moment. Her comedic instinct surfaced as well, improvising playful gestures that simultaneously poked fun at the awkward situation. Melanie lurked off stage, an unamused expression etched into her features. A number of VIPs recognized Sutton's face and voice, delighted by the spontaneous cameo. Meanwhile, press cameras advanced, capturing every second. The flustered stagehands tried to correct the lighting, but the crowd seemed too enthralled to accept a quick fix. If the night needed a spark, it had certainly arrived. As the track came to a natural close, Sutton ended with a theatrical flourish. The entire hall erupted in cheers, guests standing to applaud the unexpected performance. Sutton's face was a deep mixture of flush from the potent champagne and the rush of attention. Melanie, forced to watch from the sidelines, marched up to the mic as soon as Sutton stepped off, attempting to salvage her designated time. But half the crowd still buzzed about Sutton's unplanned spectacle, some whispering, "Is she drunk?" Others praising, "She's unstoppable," even off the cuff. Jeremy, halfway across the room, gave a delighted grin that belied his earlier anxiety. Melanie's number, now overshadowed, still happened but drew a more subdued response. Once done, she stormed backstage, complaining quietly to a colleague about how Sutton commandeered the whole event, half lush from a spiked drink. That, too, found its way into the rumor mill. By the end of the evening, the sponsor was thoroughly entertained, reportedly doubling his initial pledge, telling the board, "If your events are always this lively, consider me fully on board." Off to one side, paparazzi clustered around Sutton, peppering questions about her surprise performance and whether she intentionally usurped Melanie's moment. Though still rattled by the swirl of gossip, Sutton politely excused herself, citing a headache. She slipped back out via the side corridor, not wanting to face a throng of cameras at the main exit. The entire gala brimmed with chatter behind her, half the guests scrambling to piece together a coherent explanation for what had unfolded. Early the next morning, tabloids, websites, and social media lit up with headlines: "Sutton's drunk Broadway takeover?" or "Surprise star seizes gala stage, Melanie's big solo foiled." The more respectable arts columns adopted a gentler tone, highlighting Sutton Foster's impromptu performance delights donors. Some took note that the sponsor's donation soared, marking a victory for the foundation. Others repeated Melanie's insinuations that Sutton had willfully stolen the spotlight. Fans argued on Twitter, many praising her comedic nerve, others cautioning that it might reflect poorly on her professionalism. Sutton, when asked for comment, provided a measured response on social media. "I had no intention of overshadowing anyone's performance. A technical slip put me in the spotlight, and in the moment, I just gave a spontaneous cameo. I'm glad if it helped the fundraising cause." She avoided mentioning the strong drink, not wanting to fuel tabloids. Meanwhile, Jeremy lauded Sutton's cameo for generating record-breaking publicity for a previously low-key event. A swirl of comedic memes and reaction videos flooded the internet. Someone had recorded a shaky clip of her singing, spliced with cutaways to Melanie's increasingly displeased expression. Melanie, for her part, granted an exclusive interview to a certain gossip site, cryptically claiming, "Accidents happen, but some people know exactly how to turn them to their advantage." She stopped short of outright accusing Sutton of orchestrating the fiasco, but the implication was thick. The site milked the quotes for extra drama, stirring up debate about how real or accidental Sutton's cameo truly was. Curiously, the fiasco ended up cementing the gala's success. The board's coffers gained a new sponsor, plus additional smaller donors who found the entire night a breath of fresh air, in an often stiff social scene. The foundation's cause received more attention than any of its previous 4 galas combined. Even the paparazzi, for once, wrote about the fundraiser's mission, weaving it into the scandal story. Days later, as tabloids cooled down, the rumor mill moved to the next story. But in Broadway circles, people still spoke with hushed glee about that night Sutton Foster got accidentally tipsy and hijacked a gala. Some considered it a playful legend, an example of a true performer seizing a moment. Others chalked it up to cunning sabotage by Melanie or cunning sabotage by Sutton, depending on which side they favored. Jeremy half-jokingly suggested the board keep a hidden stash of strong champagne for future events, just in case they needed another viral moment. Sutton, ever the professional, carried on with her day-to-day rehearsals, skillfully sidestepping further press inquiries about her drunken escapade. She had performed on the biggest stages and weathered plenty of rumors before. This was just another fleeting gust in the tempest of showbiz. Yet, quietly, she admitted to a close friend that part of her found it refreshing to break the usual polite mold. "At least we made a dull gala thrilling," she mused with a rueful grin. And so, a presumably predictable, dignified Broadway gala delivered the season's most talked-about gossip, complete with rival tensions, a spiked drink, a bungled stage cue, and an unplanned showstopper courtesy of Sutton Foster. What began as an evening of safe speeches ended in an uproar of flashbulbs and laughter, the very definition of accidental magic, ensuring that Sutton's half-choreographed, half-intoxicated cameo remained lodged in Broadway lore for years to come.